my reading glasses, so it's just guessing. Now it's on.
Plug that guy in there.
No, that's,
Look at the thing.
yeah, that was,
Do we have everybody?
for that.
Funny
Yeah,
process
what
like
year
coming
is
in.
everybody?
It's your fault. I certainly did not.
Process.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready to begin our deliberations for the evening, so we are in order. We'd like to begin with reports from the dais. We have a new member on the dais, Michael Cox, and you are...
Michael Joy.
I wrote Michael Cox, but he is Michael Joy. You are representing the university, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael Joy.
Thank you. My name is Michael Joy. I'm on my 7th year of being a resident of Charlottesville City. I am the Associate University Architect at the University of Virginia in their Office of the Architect, and proud father of 2, a son and a daughter, and my wife is owner and operator of Alakazam Toys here in the downtown mall. So I'm a licensed architect in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I'm very honored and pleased to be here. So
Welcome aboard. We are looking forward to getting to know you.
thank you.
Mr. Bob.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. There was one meeting that I was not able to attend last week. It was the Tree Commission meeting on the 2nd. But from that meeting, they were working on the State of the Urban Forest report, as well as elected a new chair and vice chair, or president and vice president. And there are 3 openings on the Tree Commission right now, so encouraging people to apply. You can find that form online on the city's website. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So usually when I miss a meeting, I end up getting to have to be chair, vice chair. So how did you avoid that?
By skipping
By saying no.
No, I've been appointed by doing that. By
Yeah,
sticking
yeah,
the
it
meeting, and
happens.
like, last one in the room, dude, you're stuck with it.
Mrs. Yates.
The Charlottesville Schools CIP committee met on November 3rd, but I was not able to attend at that time. Otherwise, no report.
Mr. Duranzio.
Yes, sir. Let's see. TJPDC had their final meeting of the year. That was a wrap-up. Nothing of terrible substance there. Closed session described to the public as a personnel matter and a security issue. And this week, they've got their Regional Safety Summit tomorrow. And on Thursday, they, under their aegis, is the the Regional Housing Partnership Luncheon. Other news, the HAC did not meet in December. It is meeting this next Wednesday to take up, amongst other things, the ADU manual. CAF is getting underway now. We have the applications in. There are 22 applications for CAF money. 16 of them are for sticks and bricks, which is $835,000 available, with 2.2 in asks, so, sort of pretty standard stuff there. Similarly, on the HOP side, there are 6 applications for $585,000, and we're only short about 1.1 million there. There are 5 meetings scheduled for the CAF starting on Thursday, and 5 meetings in January. The drop dead date is sometime at the beginning of the 2nd week of February when we've got to have recommendations out. CDBG has just poked its head up. They are starting their process for that, including on the 24th, their sort of how to do this seminar. I don't know meeting schedule or timing on that, on the rest of it yet. And does that cover my remit? Yeah, I think I'm done.
Yeah, you've been busy. Mr. Stokes.
I've had no meetings since our last, so I have no report.
I don't think I've got a report either, so we'll go to NDS.
All right. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. It's great to see everyone, see our new faces. That's always great. We have been very diligently over the holiday since council has now approved our development code. We have been spending the holiday doing a lot of behind the scenes admin, getting ready for when things will be coming effective in February. So we're working up the fee schedule, a development review manual, which you all will see soon. Couple of adjustments. So it's been very hectic, trying to make sure that we are as informed as we can be. A number of public have asked questions concerning the updated code, because there were a few changes that council made from the draft that we currently have online. The consultants had some holiday time. And so they're back from holiday and they're working through the updates, and we expect to have them within days. So we should have those available for folks who don't want to review the tape to look at all of the individual things. But yes, lots of things going on. We will have our work session on the 23rd, fourth Tuesday as normal. And we'll talk about the development manual, and we'll talk about the changes that were between the planning commission and city council there, and probably another topic or two. I will note that James Freese is remote tonight, and so he may chime in here and there as needed. He'll let me know if there's something else that he needs to share. So that's it.
Wonderful. All right, I think we are ready for our first public hearing.
No,
No?
No.
Oh,
Consent
not
agenda.
quite.
where were we?
So
The-
close.
I thought we just
No, we
did-
have matters from the public.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
A little semantics difference, but yeah.
yeah, those
Second time
words.
around as chair.
So this is your opportunity for the public, an opportunity to speak to us about the work that we do. But we'll ask you not to speak about the verb or 2117 Ivy Road until we actually have a public hearing for those two.
Or the CIP. Those three items have separate public hearings.
Yeah, and CIP as well. Thank you. You always keep me.
I
you always
know, we
keep me-
work together well.
We do. That's because I listen. Also, if you want to make a comment about Langford, this is an opportunity to talk about Langford as well, because there will not be a public hearing on Langford at the end of the meeting. So, Ms. Creasy, will you moderate?
Sure. All right, it's been a while since we've done this, but just a reminder to everyone, we will start with our in-person audience, and we will see if anyone is interested in speaking, and we'll have them come forward. We also have a virtual audience this evening, so we will hear from potentially our virtual attendees. If you are interested in speaking and you are virtual, please raise your hand in the application. I don't see anyone on a phone, but if you were on a phone, you would hit *9 and that would raise your hand in the application. So is there anyone interested in speaking during matters from the public in person? All right, how about our virtual audience? All right, Chair, we don't have any speakers during matters from the public.
All right, then we will move on to the consent agenda.
I would move that we approve the consent agenda with the edits to the October 18th meeting as described previously, substituting province for provenance, and the understanding that, even though I've made this motion, I'm recusing myself with all matters to the May 10th, 2022 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention, any objections? Two abstentions, any objections? Okay, one abstention.
One abstention.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be Mr. Duranzia. Right, we are not going to be able to move forward with the public hearings until 6, until we have at least two more
Um,
counselors.
we could begin the Langford item if, we have
Ms. Rainey may not be.
individuals here.
Or you want to just do the public hearing, or?
Well, we don't have a public hearing for that item. I understand Mr. Corey has her talking points. And I don't know that we yet have all of the applicant team. Do we? We do? Okay. So that is something you all could consider, prior to the 6 o'clock. If not, it would fall later, but, you all are, scheduled not to begin the hearing until 6 o'clock.
If there is no objection from my colleagues, what I think I'd like to do is, one, give Ms. Rainey a chance to get home and get online. And two, just because of what people are expecting, just wait until later in the meeting to address it and just be in recess for the next 15 minutes, unless there's objection from you guys.
I move we recess for 17 minutes.
Okay, we'll be in recess for 17 minutes. Mr. Calvin,
Oh, I'm fine. I'm good.
I have to either verbally say I'm voting on this, on everything except affordable housing. Or I abstain.
I'd rather you do the other. I'm voting on accept. If it's all right with him.
Yeah.
Should we have two motions then?
I think I can verbally.
Convey that?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready to continue our deliberations. Mr. Mayor, is council in order?
Yes, we have quorum.
All right, very good. The first thing we need to do is to speak to a recusal. Mr. Bob.
Thanks, Chair. So I have a statement to make regarding my participation in the Planning Commission's consideration of the affordable housing items included as part of the capital improvement program. We vote on the recommendations to City Council for the Charlottesville Capital Improvement Program, fiscal year 2025 to 2029, expressly excludes items under the heading of affordable housing and further outlined on slide 5 and 11 of the Capital Improvement Program report contained in the January 9th, 2024 Planning Commission packet. I am employed by BRW Architects, and as a result of the annual salary that I receive from BRW Architects, I am required to disqualify myself from participating in the transactions. I have conferred with the City Attorney's Office, and it is their legal opinion that my voluntary disqualification is consistent with the State and Local Conflict of Interests Act. If anyone would like to review the more detailed written disclosure statement that I have filed with the Secretary of the Planning Commission, that statement is available upon request.
Thank you very much. The first item on the docket is the Capital Improvement Program. And I think we have representatives from the City Manager's Office and the Budget Office. Ms. Hamill, are you leading?
I am. Good evening. And I believe we have a PowerPoint as well, just very briefly. This is your night, so I'll be very brief, and then you guys can deliberate and ask questions if you'd like. Much of this you saw with our work session back in November, so if we could go to the next slide, please. Again, what is the Planning Commission's role in terms of the CIP? It is to review and revise or make recommendations as you see fit in how well the projects do or don't fit in with the comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. Or do I have a clicker? I guess not. So what we did here for you was we took a look at all of the projects to see all the project managers assigned a chapter of the comprehensive plan to the projects. And we took a stab at creating sort of a pie chart to show you where those projects were landing in terms of the plan. If there were projects that landed in multiple chapters, we prorated basically just evenly because there was no way to know to give a value judgment dollar-wise. But this will give you some indication of sort of where the projects in this plan, in the 5-year plan, fall within your comprehensive plan. So next slide, please. As you know, with the CIP, everything that we intend to spend needs to balance with any available revenues, and that the CIP is funded largely through bonds, but also through city cash dollars, as well as funding from the schools, PEG fees, and state and federal dollars that are passed through some of our larger VDOT projects, et cetera. So next slide, please. So over the 5-year plan, we're planning on spending just a little over $136 million. Just a little over 81 million of that is intended to be funded with bonds. If we were to look in terms of the value of the dollars in terms of where the spending is happening, you would see that it's, sorry, my eyes are not doing well, but in terms of priorities, if you were to look at that just on the dollars, you have affordable housing coming in first, transportation and access coming in second, and then education coming in third. And again, that's just with this 5 years. As you recall, last year we put in a large dollar amount for the Buford renovation. And so last year those priorities were the same three, but they were skewed a little bit differently. So next slide, please. So we're just going to take a brief minute. Again, this is the same plan that you saw back in November. We've not made any changes at this point. So we'll just take a brief stroll through each of the groups. We're looking at $5.8 million in '25 for education and $26.2 million over the 5-year total. And you'll see that the projects that are listed there. Couple new things that we added. We have added in a few dollars for roof replacements. We're trying to get that program in, as that there are a lot of those are aging roofs that need to be replaced. So that is something that got added in this plan. Next slide, please. Facilities capital projects, we have $4.6 million in '25 and $14.8 million over the 5 years. Some of those things are recurring, such as the lump sum to facilities, which we use for city facilities. We have some additional dollars that were added to enhance the General District Court project. And we are partnering with Rivanna on their baler and the baling facility, as well as a new ad this year. Last year was the first time we added money for the climate action initiatives, and we've carried that forward through the 5 years in this plan. Next slide. Public safety, we have just a little over $700,000 in '25 and $6.1 million over the 5 years. Many of these are recurring, and they're intended to set up to sort of savings accounts for things that are cyclical replacement, but large replacement dollars when we need those. And then also there were a few extra dollars that needed to be added for the bypass fire station, which hopefully will be breaking ground soon. Next slide. Transportation and access is a big section. That's $9.7 million in '25 and $29.3 million over the 5 years. Many of these are projects that are recurring in the CIP. Next slide, please. Parks and Recreation, $5 million over in '25, $9.4 million over the 5 years. Couple of things to note there. Last year we added some dollars for the invasive plant removal and also for the downtown mall trees life cycle management. In addition, for this year, the Dogwood Memorial Foundation received some state dollars, $600,000, that is put in, it's coming to the city as a pass-through that then gets passed through to the foundation. And those dollars are here as an expenditure, but also there's an offsetting revenue for that as well from the state. And then the Lower Meadow Creek Trail is new this year as well. Next slide, please. Affordable housing, $8.9 million in, oops, there's a typo, in '25, not '23, apologize, and $48.3 million over the 5 years. New ad there, a couple things. West Haven was added at $15 million. That's $5 million apiece in '26, '27, '28. In addition, 501 Cherry was added, which is a project in partnership with PHA. And there were some changes to the Friendship Court redevelopment, not in terms of total, but the way the dollars were staggered amongst the years. Next slide. Technology infrastructure, this is a small group, just a little over $500,000 in '25 and $1.9 million over the 5 years. The two new things on this, we are due to replace our voting equipment in '27, so we're starting that funding a little bit at a time so that we'll be there when it's time for replacement in '27. And then the circuit court case management system will also be an upgrade for the circuit court. Next slide. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, revenues are an important part of this. We need to make sure we have the money to pay for these projects. Specifically for 25, the general fund will be transferring in a little bit over $7 million in cash, or what we call PAYGO, for capital projects. The $78,000 is an estimated, that's the cafe fees that we collect for the mall. They come to the CIP, and those get allocated for upfit and upgrades to the mall. And then if you recall last year, we changed with the Vibrant Community Fund, anything that is a housing-related program is now coming to the CIP and is considered through those competitive processes. So that's that 575. In addition, the schools, through the conversation about Buford, last year we had some conversation about their expected gain share because of federal dollars that they are receiving. In addition, we were using up some contingency that we have that was set aside as a result of COVID that we did not need. And so that, and then the Stribling agreement is popping in here as well, as some of that work will begin, and that is in partnership with the developer on that one. So all of that totals just a little over $35 million for 25. So next slide. If you recall, some of these I've already hit through here, so I'll just let you look at these real quickly, but these are the things that were specifically new that were added to this 5-year plan that were not in the plan last year. Next slide, one more page of those. One note that I do want to bring up is the Meadow Creek Golf Course irrigation. That is a big dollar amount. However, what will happen with that is revenues from the golf course will be used to pay the debt service on this project, since it is an enterprise fund. And then the final. So there are some things that are not currently in this draft that are up for discussion from school board, council, planning commission. As you know, our city manager has been talking about homelessness and housing insecurities and a strategy for that. There's still work being done on that, but there's nothing in the CIP yet to address that. The pre-K center for Walker is a request that has been discussed but is currently not in the plan. And additional climate action initiatives. There's, the $1 million that we put in, which is a new ad, but there are other opportunities that perhaps at some point we may want to take advantage of. And then there are some regional projects that we're aware of that are of considerable amounts. The ECC potentially will be looking to renovate or to build a new place. I think they're still talking about that. The Central Library renovation, the city, that would be a city-county project as well, and the city share of that would be $7 to $8 million. And then the Dogwood Vietnam Memorial, there is a question as to whether the $600,000 they've received from the state does not seem sufficient for the work that they have done, and so there could be a potential additional ask from the city to fund the difference in that construction. And so with that, just the remaining slides are just a reminder. There's a lot of resources on our budget webpage. The budget book is out there, the comprehensive plan. If there's information you need, please take a look. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact our office. And then sort of what's next. Tonight is public hearing. This is your opportunity to weigh in on what you see, to make a recommendation to the city manager. And then the city manager takes those recommendations, and finally, a proposed budget will be presented to council in March. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Or,
Mr. Stolzenberg, you got any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Durantia,
Not at this point, sir.
Mr. Soliates?
Hello.
hello.
Significant improvement this year. I think every year we get a little bit better at this.
Thank you.
I see it. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the coaching.
Delighted. So last time we talked about this, we talked about the $1 million a year in climate spending. Do we have clarity on what that is?
So they do have a plan. They have a lot of things that they're working on. There's some grant applications and some other things for spending the money. I think because it is a new program, we're still working through a lot of those details. Stephen, did you want to add anything else?
Good evening. Stephen Hicks. I'm the interim deputy city manager and public works director. Crystal, her group and her team, they are finalizing a climate change plan. And as you know, council has already established certain goals that we need to meet, and we're identifying certain facilities that help us meet those goals with the carbon footprint and reduction. So there are a lot of potential grants coming out there through the federal and state grants, and so we need to make sure we have funds available should there be an opportunity for us to go after those grants or potentially match those grants. So I do know that Crystal is finalizing her climate change report, and then I'm sure that will be presented to the public at one point. But there is a lot of good stuff going on, and I'm sure there'll be opportunity to share that with the planning commission members as well as city council.
I have a guess, if I can guess at you. I see a lot of rooftops in the CIP. Rooftop solar?
We are either proposing to do that or prep them, so whenever we do a roof replacement, should there be more grants that come along, they're available. So we are making every effort that when we do roof repairs, that they also are built in a way that we can accommodate solar panels.
Exciting. Thank you.
I had a question on the things up for discussion, the homelessness strategy. Do we have any ballpark cost number or what's?
Just try not to come up here and talk to you. There is no, first, good evening. There is no specific strategy in the way of cost yet. There's still a lot of work to be done. Not to get ahead of council, I'm sharing something with them this week for action that we might be able to take to move this particular initiative forward. But there's a lot to be determined in what is the right approach. We're still having conversations with the county as well as with some of the local providers, trying to figure out really what the scope of our issue is, our problem that is homelessness, to figure out how big of a shelter facility we need. That's what I have identified as the priority that I have recommended to them that we prioritize. It's not the only priority in that space. Because the shelter alone is not solving the problem. It is the beginning of really doing something about the problem. There are additional permanent supportive housing units that we need, which is the item that I brought to council at their last meeting that they will hopefully pass on Monday or Tuesday. That ensures that Premier Circle continues to move because there was some issue with their budget. And I'm still looking at other projects that are in that space that support homelessness. So I don't have concrete details for you yet, but I'm still working on it. And the goal is to try to bring more of that to you. And the reason we have homelessness on the list as unresolved is because we'll be talking about this as long as I'm here.
Since you're up here already, I have another question.
May I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So are we talking bricks and mortar, or are we talking social services, or are we talking consulting fees, or are we talking all of the above?
Yes,
Okay.
all of that. I believe that is the answer to the question, is that it will be all of that.
My question was on the library renovation. I know in our last year's meeting, when we talked about it, I just wanted to clarify and get it out there that this is not something we can look at right now in the CIP. This is going kind of beyond the scope, and there's still some discussions with the county. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we know for sure that we have not proposed it in the FY25 CIP because we don't have that commitment from the county that they too can do it. I'm not convinced that we could actually afford it in our CIP for 25. So in the conversations with Mr. Plunkett, I've kind of shared with him that I think I said 27 since you're right here. Is that what that'd be the earliest?
24?
I did not tell you that. Did not say that. But I opened the conversation with the county to say that council has indicated support for the notion of prioritizing this in a future year for the CIP. And then the question was, would they be able to see the same thing? So the county executive is committed to have the conversation with the Board of Supervisors. I believe that is active. I expect that they probably will be able to figure something out as to which out year they might be able to do something, but not speaking for them. We know that it is something that both bodies are interested in making happen.
Thanks.
So that we at least have a year that we can say that we're all looking forward to.
That would be amazing to get that done. Moving down my list, the Walker campus, with the Buford School renovation and our capacity for projects of the scale, what timeline are we looking at? Is this a conversation we're having, or
Do you need to take?
what can we
the mic?
know more about that project, I guess?
It's a combination of things. Where we are, and I'll state it from my perspective, that I've not been given the directive to make Walker fit into the CIP, so that is where we are in this regard, because the directive that I received was to ensure that we got Buford into the CIP, which we did. It was given as a directive with the attachment that the grant is how we were going to go about doing that. We got the grant. It happened to be bigger than what we had anticipated in how we packaged it. So there is still, in my opinion, follow-up action by this body to give us another directive if there is one. But from a management perspective, we need that to be resolved as a part of this budget process and have that on the list for council to discuss with the school system.
Thank you. To switch gears a little bit, and Chair Mitchell, I think you mentioned this in our last year meeting, the restrooms at the parks.
Yes,
Was that you?
he did say that.
I thank you for the discussion points from the last meeting. I know you mentioned vandalism was a big cause of just expenditure. Is there some kind of way to resolve that, or what strategies?
I haven't heard one that works yet. We've been talking about this for a while. We've opted to not really keep throwing good money after a problem that we haven't been able to really solve for. So we did not prioritize spending a lot of money. Anything that we have in there now is really about new and or adding better than what we had, but not to just go and directly respond to vandalism, because it just continues to happen right now. We've got to continue to think about how we can fix that.
Seems like there's about $60,000 that we've got available in the Parks and Rec budget to at least keep things flat. As mentioned here, we may run out near the end of the year, but that'll be at the end of the year when we run out of money. So I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation that I not push too hard on that one.
And there's the other ask for the Riverview Park restrooms for $300,000.
Yes. And that's just cost overrun in the estimating of what the project was going to cost. So we were able to get that done, and hopefully we'll have a restroom out there.
Did that make it into the CI?
It is actually, is it?
There was money in the CIP for Riverside, but this
added more.
in response is something that we need to go back and look at.
Yeah, we're also, I think it's on the year-end list.
I think so.
That's what we're looking at. We're looking at it for year-end allocation to be able to close the gap that we know that exists now.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, what does it mean?
That we don't have enough money right now for what the project came in.
But
at the
you're
cost.
looking at a year-end allocation.
Yes.
What is a year-end
Because
allocation?
council has a year-end surplus that they have
Got
to
it.
give me permission to spend. So it's on the list.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Joy.
No comment.
Okay. I think we're ready to have council, input from council. Mr. Schnuck. Any question? We're looking for questions, not input, but questions for.
Yeah, I have some of the same questions that have already been asked. And I'm not going to press for further answers, but the issue of Walker and how we begin to budget that. I remember we didn't budget Buford until we finally said, we don't really know what it involves, but we're going to put a marker of $30 million in the budget. And between now and the next year, we're going to figure out what that means. And I wonder whether it might not be useful to do that at some point, just so we can focus everybody's attention on it. I have no particular recommendation at this time, just a thought.
Yes, and I'll tag on to that because we're meeting with them actually tomorrow night, but it won't be a budget meeting that we're having with the school board. It's more kind of update, so project, we'll be having a budget meeting later, so it'll be interesting to see what the school board says they want as their priority. I mean, we can talk this, but they make that decision. It'll be interesting to see what they says. There's a lot of changes take place over the last year and a half on the school side, so their priorities may have changed. So we'll be scheduling that soon, but so that I don't have any questions at this point either. Yeah.
And I'll just say in response to that, council will have an opportunity to weigh in because we will have to come to you with a memo for your appropriation of the school construction grant. So at the time last year when we were having these discussions, we were talking about a potential grant opportunity for $6 to $7 million. It actually came in at a little over 17 million. So you all will, need to appropriate that, and part of that discussion will be, of course, those grant dollars have to go to the Beaufort School project, but those are bonds we don't have to sell that we can help preserve capacity and bond capacity for future projects in future years. So you will have numerous opportunities to talk about that.
She's reading my mind. I was just about to ask her, could you explain what the next step is? Perfect.
Mr. Bingston?
Yes, so thank you. Excellent as always. I do, for the Walker project, I would just suggest we go ahead and put numbers, like Lloyd mentioned, something in 3 years out, 2 or 3 years out, in the same sort of way that we did with Beaufort to force conversations, because, again, we'll talk with the school board. Maybe they've, we need to hear from them. I understand that, but I'm pretty confident when the people there that they're going to want this. And so I think the sooner we start just being realistic about the fact that this needs to happen within 5 years, I would think. The other piece is the library. I feel like there's been some really good conversations with folks, with Mr. Plunkett and others not too long ago. And but again, this is one that I would like to see within the next 5 years, within the next couple of years, like at least get the design done and realize that it will take a number of years, and trying to get everything aligned to the county. I think we definitely need to work towards that. At the same time, I don't want us to be completely hamstrung by their decisions. I don't think that will happen. I think there is alignment that we can get, but the library, in addition to being full of books, which I love, is also an important social component of the city. Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you. That just makes your life harder, but I'm expecting it. Yeah.
And Councilor Aspen, welcome, and any questions?
Hi, okay, thanks so much. I'm still learning things around here. So some of my questions are things that I'm catching up on, but some of them I think are reviewing some things. So the Riverview Park restroom, I think it's a great idea to have one there. There's not tons of detail in this particular report about it and why it would cost $687,000. Is there a fuller description of that somewhere?
There is, and we can get that to you. This has been, I don't know how long it's been on the books.
A while.
It's been on the books for quite some time. It's the floodplain, so that complicates it. And that's part of why it has escalated in price, is to try to find the right kind of restroom facility that can withstand the riverbanks overtopping, and then what that can do to a restroom facility and what that might do to nearby neighbors and all. So we've gone back and made a couple of changes. There was a redesign, a small redesign, I want to say maybe almost 2 years ago, that escalated the price. So that's the reason why it's gone up each time, and then just time from when we first got an estimate on it, it's increased because everything costs more to build tomorrow.
That's true. And then thank you for that. For the list of tree plantings, is there this is on page 67, is there a list somewhere of those trees that were planted?
Yes, I can safely say that. I don't have it, but I can make sure we get that to you. Because our urban forester is responsible for how everything is placed, so he's tracking that, planning all of that, so we would.
Is there part of this budget that goes to getting him help? As far as I know, there's a small department.
Getting him help, no, because that was not an ask. I can tell you that much.
I think some of that work is contracted, but we can
Yeah.
find out for you. And also, I think I'm right about this. I believe that there is a website that's part of the Parks and Rec Department webpage that has information about the tree planting and the progress of that as well.
Okay, thanks.
But we can send you
We can
links
definitely
and
send you
get
what we have.
information to both those questions.
Thank you. And then for the baler and the baler facility for the Solid Waste Authority, I'm not an expert in sewer and waste authority, but is that, how like dire is that particular need?
Very, because
Okay.
it's at the end of its functional life.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we probably have gone a little longer than we should have at this point, unresolved. And this is really about just making sure that we have the appropriate
Okay,
facility.
yeah, I wasn't sure if we were ahead or behind.
And we're a regional partner in that, so that's just the city's share. The county is also
Yeah, it costs a lot more than that,
picking that up.
sadly.
Glad to have partners. For the climate action initiatives, I know we got kind of a little bit just now about that, but would, I'm not quite sure what the grants that we're looking at are, but would like e-bike subsidies be able to fall into that category, or, sidewalk and protected bike lanes, since those are things that would go towards our climate action goals?
That would be considered more infrastructure, sidewalk and bike lane, so no, it would not be used for that. The initiatives funds are intended to be grant match dollars so that we can bring down even more, or specific projects that are within the work plan that is pulled out of the climate action plan. So the question, and I think we probably just need to get you some more information as to where things are. This is an update for everybody at this point of the choice of mine to elevate the Office of Sustainability by pulling environmental out of Public Works was to give them more time and attention to then spell out what it is that they're going to be able to accomplish over the course of any year, like all the other departments and offices. But because they overlap all other departments and offices, they got to work better with everybody. I extended their work plan from a 12-month plan to make it go through the end of the fiscal year so that they then can follow a fiscal year work plan for like everyone else. I should be getting that update soon, and I'll be sharing that with everyone so that you can see what the work plan is. And Commissioner Sully Yates, that'll probably answer your question about what specific are the projects that they're intending to work on. We're going to do a better job of putting that information out front more consistently. I'm striving to get where are we building, where are we planting trees, where are we building sidewalks, where are we doing these different things on our website so that everybody can see it all the time and update as we go. That's one of my big priorities right now.
Great, thank you. And then, this is probably somewhere also, the YMCA trail, what's going on with that? It's 400,000 for the YMCA trail.
I believe, is that a VDOT grant match?
It may be. I'm not, because of it being labeled here YMCA Trail, so I'm not 100% sure. Just thinking about it. It is.
I believe we got some VDOT money to support that, don't we?
If it's a VDOT project, that just means it's one of the, we have 3 trail projects that are in the VDOT portfolio. Stephen has spent a considerable amount of time, and before him, I spent a considerable amount of time just trying to get things back on track. The project is designed, it's about construction at this point, so if you want to know what the project is, we can get that information to you, because that is already determined.
Yeah, thank you. And then, this is just, what does ECC mean?
Emergency Communications Center.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Yeah,
I'll
make
get
us
there.
tell you those things, because we use acronyms a lot.
I will get there. And then, let me look. I don't know if the street milling and paving is probably like a general fund, but is that where protected bike lanes would fall into that, or is that a separate?
This is, well, street milling and paving is just redoing. Which is redoing roads.
Paving.
Mr. Senator, we do work with our traffic engineering and planning, should there be
We do work with our transportation planner, Ben, as well as our traffic engineering, so should there be opportunities for us to maximize the pavement width to include some type of bike lanes, we do take that into consideration.
Okay. I'm gonna be bringing that up a lot.
She's already warned me on that. And I'll just say too, since I can, there'll be more discussion coming. He loves that I just pointed him out. Our transportation planner, Ben, is going to be coming back to council. He did a great job earlier in last year to kind of bring council up to date as to what we were trying to accomplish by bringing him into the space and then coordinating. We have some good work that's underway right now, sidewalks specifically. I know you're coming for me. So we have some work that we're doing in that space that we'll be able to roll out exactly what I said. We're going to put on the website which sidewalks are we going to get done on this schedule so that you can hold me to it. And then we'll keep adding to that going forward. But Ben is coordinating that work for us right now.
And then, this is, I think, an accounting question, not my strong suit, so I just wanted to clarify. For the Stribling agreement, that 2.9 million, that's technically a loan, right?
It is.
And so, with that falling in, so that goes in the revenue category, even though it's something we have to pay back?
Well, it is a revenue that will come in to the CIP. We will also add city money to it, and then we will be repaying that back, yes.
Because it's a liability.
Right, so yeah, okay, so it's kind of both. Got it, okay. Thank you.
And one follow-up, I had a friend phone about the YMCA trail. It is to close one of the gaps in the 250 bypass trail between the YMCA and Dairy Bridge, which is close to shovel-ready.
I should have remembered that. Yes, that's it.
All right, this is a tax neutral budget, right?
Yes, so far.
So far, okay.
Well, you only got CIP, this is only one section of the budget, so yes. As where we are today, that is correct.
Very good, and thank you very much. I do believe, unless there are any more questions from this dais, we're ready to hear from the public.
All
So,
right.
Ms. Creasy, would you moderate?
Sure. All right, well, I'll provide the instructions again. I'll let everyone know that we'll take in-person comments first, and then we'll rotate with our online audience. If you are on our online audience, you are advised to go ahead and raise your hand within the application if you're interested in speaking this evening. We don't have any phone calls in, but if you were to be on a phone call, *9, and we would be able to recognize you from there. In-person audience, do we have any speakers? We'll start here. Just a reminder, we have 3 minutes, and provide your name for the record.
Hello, my name is David Plunkett, and I'm a lifelong Charlottesville resident, and I'm here today in my role as the director of Jefferson Madison Regional Library, serving Charlottesville, Albemarle, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson. First of all, I wanted to thank council and city staff for working very closely with the library board on a central library renovation. This has been many, many years in the works, and they co-own that building with Albemarle County, and I appreciate the work that council and staff have done to open conversations with Albemarle about the need for this project. I'm here today to ask that the city consider including central library renovation in the upcoming 5-year capital improvement program. That means working closely with Albemarle County to fund a 2-part project. 1 year would be architecture and engineering, and then the construction itself could begin hopefully immediately following. The Central Library has served as the main branch of the Jefferson Madison Regional Library since 1981. Building's co-owned by Charlottesville and Albemarle County. and it is the most public building in Charlottesville, I guarantee. It serves this community with doors wide open, 68 hours a week. Actually, the doors aren't physically wide open because of the vestibule there, but hopefully a renovation will fix that. They are metaphorically wide open, 68 hours a week. Central also serves as the administrative headquarters of the regional library system. The Central Library is in need of renovation. The last major upgrade was over 40 years ago. The city has managed this 100-year-old building, plus more than 100 years, remarkably well, renovating restrooms, adding a new chiller, performing day-to-day maintenance needed to keep serving the community. In fact, this afternoon, staff was over there plugging holes as water was coming into the building. So it is a labor of love for city staff that needs more love. There are issues that need to be addressed in order to continue to provide the quality service that the people of Charlottesville expect and deserve. Library use is a high priority for this community. J. Morrell was named the Virginia Library Association's Library of the Year in 2022, largely because of the support of the people of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson. The changing face of library service, though, means that facilities need to keep pace with changing community needs for their information-seeking needs. In 2015, the Friends of the Library commissioned a design study for the renovation of Central and are prepared to support this project with extensive fundraising. The estimated cost in 2015 was $8.74 million, and the most recent CIP submission that J.A. Morrell sent to the city and the county, accounting for inflation, was $15.82 million. So the price continues to rise every year. The project is delayed. Currently, the city's share would be between $7 and $8 million. So the goals of the renovation aligns with the strategic planning and missions and values of the cities, including caring for an aging capital asset, providing equitable service, ensuring accessibility, modernization of library services, and taking advantage of the values of a shared facility and the fundraising that the Friends of the Library are prepared to bring. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move to our virtual audience, and our first speaker is Elizabeth Stark. Ms. Stark, can you hear me? Ms. Stark? All right, her hand went, oh, no, it's still up. Ms. Stark? Oh, hi, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now.
Okay,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. Thank you.
You can begin.
Hi, Planning Commission and councilors and City Manager Sanders. Thank you so much for having this public hearing today. And I just want to say I'm so impressed with the capital improvement plan budget. I'm so glad to see funding for things like rent relief in there, as well as so much funding for affordable housing. As we're looking to the future of Charlottesville, I really hope that we can examine ways that we can take more control of our affordable housing future. And one of those options I would really like to see explored is for the city to form a land bank. And that would be an entity that would be able to purchase land when it becomes available, sort of akin to the purchase of the floodplain or the circus grounds made recently, land that then could be developed into something else in the future. But specifically for housing, we know that the market for housing is really going to heat up with the new zoning, and I would just love for the city to be empowered with the ability to purchase housing without having to have an entire development plan in place. And then once the city has a land bank, I'd love to see that established with the $500,000 that was set aside for affordable housing at the end of fiscal year 23. And then hopefully even matched, because I think $1 million obviously is a drop in the bucket of what we need if we really want to be able to meaningfully prevent displacement, especially in our core Black neighborhoods in Charlottesville. But beyond that, I'd really love to see a robust investment in land trust housing. Land trust housing has, especially deeply sustainable land trust housing, has incredible benefits for the community, for wealth building, for a bridge to home ownership for folks who might not otherwise be able to own homes. And I think it's a tool in our toolkit that we need to get that. We need to have that available to us. So as you're looking at the CIP and the ways that we're using affordable housing and working with nonprofit partners, I really hope that you can prioritize land bank and land trust housing. Thank you so much.
All right, our in-person speaker?
Good evening, Planning Commission, Council, and members of the public. I'm Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council and a Charlottesville resident. First, congratulations on completing the long journey to update the housing policy, the comp plan, and the zoning code. These will result in a city that is more sustainable, more livable, and more equitable. It will also require much better walk-bike infrastructure and park access than what we currently have today. I would like to highlight a current set of interconnected projects that will accomplish both of these things and would dramatically change the way people experience and get around the community. There's a long-term vision for a 4-mile loop that will tie the core of the region together. It is centered around McIntyre Park, the Meadow Creek Valley, and the John Warner Parkway. This vision is now within reach. Staff has requested funding in the CIP for a crucial segmented greenway between McIntyre Park and an existing but hidden shared use path behind the YMCA, CHS, and the fire station, the so-called YMCA connector. This, plus a tiny remaining segment, will link to a second project the city has already funded and is set to build this year that will connect Mickey Drive, Greenbrier Park, Hillsdale, and the 29 corridor. There is also a feasibility study for a tunnel under the railroad tracks connecting Greenbrier Park to the John Warner Parkway Trail. The possibilities are unlimited. Here's what has to happen next. Please support the staff's request for funding for this trail and others like them. Commit flexible funds for any shortfalls. Those do arise sometimes. Please expedite the missing easement acquisition along 250. It's small and it's in reach. Also, please prioritize the Greenbrier Tunnel. That's going to be a crucial link for both the city and the county. Feasibility study's almost done. It's time to move to the next stage and get it in the regional transportation priority list. This is also just a piece of the overall work to eliminate the small but debilitating gaps that exist all over the community. On a related note, not exactly CIP, but definitely CIP adjacent, I hope the city manager's proposed program budget will include funding for dedicated trail maintenance. This will free existing staff for needed planning, project management, and fundraising. It's also my experience working with the community that elders, women, people of color, and the young are far more likely to use trails that are well maintained. So proper maintenance extends the life, but it extends the equitable reach of our trails and connections. I look forward to seeing this vision come together, and thank you all for your work.
All right, our virtual audience, we have Perry Meldon.
Hello, can folks hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Perry Meldon, and I'm a renter living at 210 Mead Avenue. My congratulations again to City Council and the City Manager for approving the new zoning code. And as we all know, the zoning rewrite is only one step toward creating equitable, affordable housing opportunities. So as you all move forward with deliberating the city budget for 2025, I call on City Council to commit to establishing a land bank using at least $1 million of budgetary funds, including the $500,000 allocated for housing from earlier year surpluses. A land bank has the power to purchase distressed properties and then hold them for future management by a nonprofit land trust entity like Piedmont Community Land Trust. Now, by allocating budgetary funds to both a land bank and a land trust, the city has the opportunity to plan creatively for permanently affordable, climate resilient, and multifamily housing. With affordable housing a top priority for the 5-year plan, there is no better time than now to expand on land trust projects. And we've already got great examples like those in Fifeville and Kindlewood. By investing in a land trust land bank initiative, the city commits to creating below market rate housing, which will in turn ensure opportunities for generational wealth building. Thank you so much.
All right, do we have any additional speakers in person? All right, do we have any additional virtual speakers? If you are interested in speaking, you need to raise your hand in the application. All right, all right, Chair, looks like we've had our speakers.
All right, the public hearing is now closed, and we may begin our deliberations. Why don't we start with your thoughts, Mr. Stolzenberg?
Sure. Let's talk about sidewalks. That's actually the main thing I'd like to talk about this year. The Budget Explorer, the website to explore the CIP, which is excellent, by the way, describes the sidewalk fund as, quote, inadequate to implement sidewalk construction at a meaningful scale. So, you know, as part of the comprehensive plan and during our zoning rewrite process, I think we made a promise, the city, made a promise to the city that we would invest in the infrastructure to make the city a more walkable place to help people get out of their cars. And $100,000 a year is just not an investment in that. And so I've gone back through prior years' budgets. They're all listed back to 2007 on the city website to look at what we put into the sidewalk fund pre-pandemic. So FY 2020, for example, we had 400,000. 2019, 380. 206 before that, 200, 200, 285 in FY 2015, 285 before that, 285 before that, 300 in FY 2012, 300. We zeroed it out actually in FY 10. That was the big recession. But the prior year, we actually budgeted 1.05 million for sidewalks. And then I had to go all the way back to the very first budget, FY 07, to find the last time prior to the pandemic where we put as low as $100,000 into the sidewalk fund. And I think, you know, nowadays you get a little less sidewalk for $100,000 than you did back in 07. And so, you know, I understand that we have difficulty actually building sidewalks now. But all the money we have in the fund is now committed to projects that exist. And it seems to me if we are making an honest commitment to building sidewalks as we've promised, we need to both fix that operational problem and, you know, work through the supply chain shortages and contractor shortages that we have at the moment, but also be putting money into that pot. So that when we're able, we have the money there to build sidewalks. And so I would suggest a minimum of $500,000 per year in new sidewalk funding, with the aim of eventually getting up to $1 million per year in new sidewalks. You know, those are levels where we can actually start to make a meaningful impact on our sidewalk backlog. Granted, we don't know, we don't have our list of sidewalk priorities, but we know that we're gonna have a list of sidewalk priorities. And we know that at $100,000 a year, we're not gonna be able to tackle even that very first priority. So by putting a meaningful amount into the fund, we know that when we get that list, we can say, all right, let's take a look at this and start to work our way down. That's my proposal.
Thank you. Mr. Duranzia.
I would like to thank Commissioner Stolzenberg for stealing my thunder. And actually, do we know, how much money do we have on tap for that right now?
It's all committed to existing projects.
Oh, it's all committed, so
But it's,
none.
yeah, I mean, 100,000 in this year's budget.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna, this was a hobby horse I was gonna ride, but I'm not gonna force everyone to sit through my version of this. But I would agree, generally concur with Commissioner Stolzenberg. We need to, I think that we get persistent, perennial, and uninterrupted drum beats from the public and the people of the city about getting the sidewalks sorted. And I know it's difficult, and finding the resources in terms of the human capital to do it and the companies to do it and the timing to do it. You know, the very least we can do is make sure we've got the money while we struggle with the rest of it, and make it clear that we're laying down a marker. And I don't know what that number is, 500,000, yeah, at least $1 million. I'm not sure what that is, but I think we need to start making a consistent commitment on that point for the moment. And
You have no thoughts on the land bank, land trust?
Oh, I have a great deal of thoughts on the land bank.
Where's
I think,
Lyle going to?
land bank, and I think we do need to establish one. We have a draft that is a little long in the tooth, and we're actively working. Commissioner Solietz and I are actively working on that with city staff to develop a land bank, and that can function, that has all the functionality that the public has sort of commented on tonight and more. So that's in the works, right now.
There's so many things I want to spend money on. My problem is not great things to spend money on, though I'm going to list them anyway. Sidewalks, trails funding, getting design and engineering for the library in the budget to move that forward. Those jump out as priorities, and I think those make a lot of sense. I can't find any fat to cut in this budget, which is a compliment and also a frustration. I really looked. We have more needs than we have resources in the CIP at this time, which is troubling. I'm uncomfortable voting for increased spending at this time unless we can figure out a way to fund it. That is my concern.
I think Lila's spot on. Looking at it, there was nothing to take out. Unless we can add more bonds, which we maybe could do. But would you, I guess, talking to Commissioner Lyle and Phil, would you want to see a line item in the CIP for land bank funding? Is that something in the out years similar to potentially a library design? I don't know if that's the avenue for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's the avenue for it necessarily, and I think at this point, we kind of don't know what we don't know as far as how there are funding mechanisms for a land bank that we need to look at and sort of balance that, and anything that we put in the year out now. I mean, sure, let's put $5 million a year into the land bank for the next 5 years out. I'm in favor of that if we could find $5 million, but I just don't know at this moment how much money from the city we're actually going to need, and we need to have a nonsense number in there. I agree with you on the borrowing for more bonds. I mean, I'm looking back fondly on the days where they were giving money away for free in the bond market, and hindsight is 20/20. We probably should have borrowed every dime we possibly could at 1%. That's free money. But I agree with you there.
He is correct.
Question on our funding the CIP. I'm looking at that slide on the planned revenues and must equal planned expenses. It's slide number 4, I think. We show a decrease over the years between now and 2029. Is that because we just don't have projects planned? Why is that so?
It is. We basically are just balancing the revenues to the expenditures that are planned at this point.
Okay, so if,
And as we've talked about, you know, many years we've come to you and we've talked about bond capacity being an issue. That is not so much the issue now as affording the debt service.
where I was going with my question is if we were to put something like Walker if council was, or the library innovation, do we have wiggle room in those out years to do that?
You know, with every ad, we'll have to rerun the projections. I will say that right now in our CIP, Beaufort was planned with a much higher bond sale than what we know we need now because of the grant that's been awarded. Of course, if you look at what's not in the plan, there's as much or more that could be added on the expenditure side as well. So could we add it? Yes. How much do we want to add? And, you know, what can we give up or not? We'd have to work the puzzle pieces. But could we? Sure.
On that, could we? What do design services or like engineering drawings for library innovation, would those be bondable or not bondable?
Typically, we do. That would be included in a bondable expense because it is part of the project. The interesting thing with the library is that we really have to move lockstep with the county because it is a joint project. And so even if the city were to put in money, if the county is not able to do the same step, then it becomes a little bit interesting in how we move forward. So we are, you know, as Mr. Sanders indicated, he is in close contact with the county executive and our budget office. We are communicating as they're moving through their process as well. So it is on the radar for sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Troy?
I just wanted to take a moment to thank city staff and the city manager for the work and the clarity of the CIP proposal. And I don't have any specific comments, but I do appreciate your hard work.
All right, I think this is the 7th one of these I've done, and this is the easiest to follow and the most logical process that I've seen in the 7 years I've done this. So thank you very much for that. I, like Lyle, am uncomfortable asking for money that we don't have. But one thing is, I mean, the idea of sidewalks is important. The idea of land bank, land trust is important. Looks like we're working on that piece. The library piece is important. The one thing that we've done in these meetings in years gone by is not necessarily lend an amount to what we're asking for, but to ask council as they begin deliberating to give thought to finding money for the things like sidewalks and finding money for the library and finding money or begin thinking about finding money for land bank and land trust. So I would recommend that when we make our motions and we ask for those things, we don't do the $500,000 every year, but we just ask council to consider it. And if you can come up with something that they might offset that with in your motion, that'd be great. But if you're not able to, in years gone by, we've not been able to do that either. And council has worked with the city manager's office to find ways to make it work, and or use what Mr. Sanders called, I think it was the end of year money, the surplus money to do things like funding sidewalks, land banks, land trusts, and the library. So with that, is there a motion that people would like to structure that we can begin amending? It's kind of you loud to keep this thing off.
To stall for time for Lyle, I would maybe point out that council did make a $6 million initial contribution to a land bank to seed it with some land just recently.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Still thinking.
Thank you.
I should have prepped you for
don't
this.
think
Sorry.
We don't have any language in the packet for recommending a motion, do we?
No.
We do not.
Very good.
So
Stop the scrolling.
what you could do is recommend that we approve the budget as submitted by staff with any amendments that your colleagues would like to make.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Yeah, what would that motion be?
I would like to recommend that we approve the capital improvement plan as presented by staff with amendments as discussed here at the dais.
And I'll go from Mr. Stolzenberg to Mr. Joy and see if there are any amendments you'd like to add.
Can I get a second?
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Okay, any amendments?
So, well, in past years, I've spent a fair amount of effort finding things to cut, actually, from these CIPs. I don't actually have anything in this one, though there are some items with pending balances that I still think, are worth questioning. One that comes to mind is the SIA immediate implementation account, which we're still funding, I guess, with $200,000 per year. And I get that we're expanding that to a small area plan implementation, but it already has over $1.6 million going in here. I'm not going to put that in an amendment that I'll propose, but I would like to recommend at least a minimum dollar amount for sidewalks each year or at least say something like, exceeding pre-pandemic funding amounts for new sidewalks. To really convey that the $100,000 that we're talking about now is not nearly adequate for what we're talking about, which, to be fair,
So would you net out an amendment?
Sure. So I would propose an amendment to change the new sidewalk fund to increase the amount in the new sidewalk fund to exceed pre-pandemic new sidewalk funding levels each year.
Ms. Creasy, protocol question. Do we need to vote on that, or do we just keep going till we have all the amendments?
How about we see if we have a long list, because we're in kind of weird land here. We've got a motion and a second, but the motion is on items that you all haven't talked about specifically yet, so it is a little wonky. Why don't we get it all on the table?
Okay.
And see how complicated it will be to work
Okay.
through.
Mr. Drancio.
Yeah, the only sort of substantive dollar change I would, that I'm where I'm in the headspace to jump on board and do is the sidewalk piece. I would sort of focus Commissioner Stolzenberg's request with the pre-pandemic levels and let us look at all of these existing capital accounts, even if we're making relatively small cuts to various things, because we know we've got some cushion there to try to accumulate the
I
funds.
think you're endorsing the amendment as
I am endorsing
articulated
well, it's not an amendment, it's the suggestions that are coming on the dais. I'm
Well, it's the
generally
amendment. I
agree.
mean, he just-
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Mrs. Hitz.
I agree with what's been discussed at this time. I would also like to recommend providing funding in the out years for design and engineering for the central library renovation.
I agree with everything that's been said.
No specific comment, but just a general agreement with the sentiment that's being presented.
To Ms. Creasy, we've got sidewalks, we've got the library.
we can do what we've done in past years, is you all have moved forward the CIP, our recommended approval with the consideration of the following items. And so what we've done with that each year is we put that into a memo format. We verify that that was the language, and then that is included as part of the budget packet. It's pretty high on the top of the packet so that council's reminded of those items. So I think maybe if well, I don't know if everyone is going to agree with the two items.
I have a sense that we are.
I kind of was thinking that as well.
Especially if we articulate it and present it to council the way you just outlined, that we, yeah, I think we can get 4 votes, 5 votes.
Is it appropriate to sort of add looking at the sort of capital accounts at de minimis to find money for these things, or are we just going to leave that to staff to try to spin it? Yeah, we'll just leave staff to scramble for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we, how do we proceed with the vote? What do you want to kind of walk us through what the vote's going to be on?
Sure. Maybe Mr. Sully Yates can restate his motion, which was very brief, and I can read to him. And he can add the 2 items that you all specifically wanted consideration for. I think staff will be looking at the funding amounts, so I don't know that you need to restate that unless you feel like you need to restate that.
What are we got the library, we got sidewalks, what was the third?
The third, I thought Mr. Duranzio was.
So he backed away.
All right, then we have the 2.
Okay.
Why
don't you just read it to us and we'll vote based on your reading unless there's an objection.
All right, so Mr. Solo Yates provided a motion to approve the CIP, which recommended the CIP as discussed, with the following recommendations to provide to council. One being to recommend to change the new sidewalk fund to increase to an amount that exceeds pre-pandemic sidewalk amounts, and to recommend funding in the out years for the library renovation design work.
Yes.
And that was seconded by Mr. Stolzenberg.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Are we ready to vote? Ms. Creasy?
Sure. Mr. Sully Yates.
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio.
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg.
Aye.
Mr. Habab.
I am voting aye on everything except the affordable housing portion.
And on that, you are abstaining.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
All right, so that motion carries.
All right, on to council it goes. Thank you very much. Council, your work here is done. You're welcome to spend the rest of the evening with us, but we're going to go into the Verb and Ivy Road. But we won't need your input on those. All right, the next item on the docket is Verb Charlottesville. It is a PUD ZM 23-00004. This is the second time that we've talked about this. The first time that we talked about this, there was an anomaly in our mailing, and we did not mail all the folks that needed to be aware of this project. We have fixed that, and as a result, we've notified more people, and we want to give those additional people that have been notified an opportunity to offer their input. So we're going to have another public hearing to allow for their input. And Mr. Alfley is managing this application.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, not too much more I'll add. I will just give briefly on this project. You have seen this project several times. On December 18th, City Council held a meeting for this. They voted on all the supplemental applications that came along with this. If you remember, there was a critical slope waiver, a sidewalk waiver, there was amending the closing of Woodrow Street, there was amending the sale of the property to allow development. Those passed. During that meeting, the applicant did verbally change their proffers to include more money as a contribution to the city's affordable housing fund. Due to that, this is going back next week to City Council to address that proffer change. There was time between City Council's meeting and their meeting next week to address this anomaly with the mailing. So staff thought it was prudent to hold a additional public hearing outside of this public hearing with City Council, just with Planning Commission, to allow anyone that did not receive notice a chance to speak. With that, the applicant is here, but unless there's a need to hear from the applicant, staff is anticipating opening the public hearing, closing the public hearing after anyone who wants to speak can speak, and then Planning Commission making a recommendation just on the zoning map amendment.
All right, any questions for the staff? Any questions for the applicant? Right, we will then move on to the public hearing. Ms. Creasy, would you narrate?
Sure. We will open the public hearing is now opened. We'll look to our in-person audience first, and then we'll move to our virtual audience. Do we have any members of our in-person audience who would like to speak? All right, seeing none. Our virtual audience, if you are interested in speaking on this item, please raise your hand in the Zoom application. All right, checking one more time to see if we have any speakers. All right, Chair, we don't have any speakers.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. We should begin our deliberations. Any thoughts from the Planning Commission?
Do we require an action by the commission at this time?
We have to vote again. Yes. Yes. If there are no thoughts, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Yes.
I've moved to recommend that City Council should approve ZM 23-00004 on the basis that approval of the proposed PUD development is consistent with the city's adopted comprehensive plan and will serve the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Ms. Creasy?
Sure. Mr. Solo Yates?
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio?
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg?
Aye.
Mr. Habab?
Aye.
And Mr. Mitchell?
Yes. Right, that concludes our discussion of Verb. And now we're going on to 2117 Ivy Road, ZM 23-0000. This is also a PUD, and the same reason as before exists for having to do a second review.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Dan O'Connell, planner with NDS. I will be very brief. As Mr. Mitchell said, this is the same reason as Verve. This is the same PUD application you saw back in November. City Council last considered it on their December 18th session. And at that meeting, they requested verbally changes to the applicant's proffer statement, which the applicants agreed to. At the conclusion of that meeting, after they had voted to approve, they voted to have a new public hearing or a new hearing or a new consideration of their application in January to make those changes to the proffer statement legally binding. And that'll be what's happening next week on the 16th. Meanwhile, we did notice the discrepancy in our mailings, and so we elected to have a new public hearing before the Planning Commission, which is tonight, to make sure that we are fulfilling our obligation to advertise to adjacent residents. But happy to take any questions if you have them.
Any questions for staff or the applicant? Ms. Creasy, the public hearing is now open. Would you, unless you need me to come down there and take over your laptop?
No, I got it. Checking our in-person audience. Do we have any speakers? All right. Looking to our virtual audience in Zoom. If you're interested in speaking on this item, please raise your hand in the Zoom application. All right. One last call. All right, Chair, we have no speakers.
All right, the public hearing has ended. Is there a motion?
There is, sir. I have a motion.
Please.
Chair Mitchell, I move to recommend that City Council should approve ZM 23-3 on the basis that approval of the proposed PUD development plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and will serve the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice.
A second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Ms. Creasy.
All right, Mr. Stoley Yates?
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio?
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg?
Aye.
Mr. Habab?
Aye.
And Mr. Mitchell?
And aye. Right, the next item on the docket is a rezoning application, that's ZM 23-0002, and a special use permit application, SP 23-0003, located at 108 Langford Avenue. What we will do is we will get the staff report for both, and we'll get the and we'll have the applicant do their presentation for both, and we'll do the public hearing for both. But when we vote, we have to vote on the rezoning application, and then we have to vote on the SGP. So I forget, Ms. Rainey is managing this, but
She is. We're in the process of promoting her to panelist.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, thank you. So sorry for the delay, I just got in through the door, pulling up the application. It's quite the drive home. Thank you, Carrie Rainey, City Planner with Neighborhood Development Services. As our chair has mentioned, Green Retro Salvage Holdings LLC has submitted a rezoning application and a special use permit application for a development at 108, 110, and 112 Langford Avenue. The Planning Commission and the City Council did hold a joint public hearing on these applications on November 14th of 2023. After the hearing, the Planning Commission granted the applicant's request to defer the application in order to make modifications. The applicant has also chosen to defer waiver application until a later date. The modifications to the rezoning and special use application, reducing the potential residential units, which were previously proposed to be 49 units with a density of 51 dwelling units per acre, to be now 46 residential units, which would be a density of 49 dwelling units per acre. In addition, they would retain 2 of the 3 existing structures on the site that front Langford Avenue. They provided a modification to their proffer statements, which now provide 10% of units as affordable for 99 years from the first certificate of occupancy, and have provided additional landscaping within the proposed parking lot. The rezoning application requests a change from the existing R1S small lot residential zoning to R3 multifamily residential zoning, and the special use permit would allow the additional residential density up to 49 dwelling units per acre, as well as proposed modifications to the front and side setbacks of the property. The 2021 comprehensive future land use map designates the subject property and adjacent properties as general residential. Properties across Langford Avenue are designated as general residential sensitive community areas. The land use description for general residential states that this area allows for additional housing choice within existing residential neighborhoods with forms compatible to the existing context, including house-sized structures with similar ground floor footprint areas and setbacks as the surrounding residential structures. Up to 2.5 stories of height is recommended, and 3 residential units per lot, with 4 residential units permitted if an existing structure is maintained. As noted before, the applicant is currently proposing 46 residential units through the special use permit, and would be permitted to have 19 residential units should the rezoning application be approved without the special use permit. The revision to show retention of 2 of the 3 existing structures along the front of the property is consistent with the neighborhood pattern and scale. However, staff has concern the 3 remaining proposed buildings will be taller and have a larger footprint than typical patterns of the neighborhood. In addition, the proposed development's density does not align with the neighborhood's patterns of development. While the proposed zoning may contribute to some aspects of the city's comprehensive plan, such as diversifying housing options in support of Goal 2 of the housing chapter, staff finds that the rezoning would not be consistent with the future land use map, land use description categories, and several goals and objectives of the land use chapter focused on context-sensitive infill and respecting existing neighborhoods and patterns of scale. In addition, while the subject property is not within any historic districts, we will note that the western adjacent property is an individually protected property, and the eastern adjacent property contains the Goings family cemetery. The city preservation planner has noted the applicant must be careful to not disturb any known burial sites, and recommends the applicant retain a licensed archaeologist to determine if unknown graves are present on the subject property, and if found, ensure no construction continues until notice is provided to the city's preservation planner. The city traffic engineer has confirmed the proposed development will not create a significant impact to the city's street network. The existing conditions of Langford Avenue generally align with the recommendations of the streets that work plan. The narrow travel lanes and on-street parking limit potential improvements in the right-of-way. The proposed development would meet on-site requirements, which would minimize impacts to the availability of on-street parking for other residents in the area. As previously described for the rezoning application, staff remains concerned with the use and scale of the proposed development in relation to the proposed density. However, should the commission recommend approval, staff has provided a series of potential conditions within the special use permit staff report for the commission consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Mr. Stosenberg.
I have no questions.
Mr. Duranzia.
I have no questions.
Mr. Soliates.
Ms. Rainey, good evening. Thank you for your safely traveling this evening. We've addressed, I've seen a lot of the issues that came up last time addressed, but I don't see the safety issues that the public spoke about. Extreme speeding down the hill, people just distracted drivers, using the street as a cut-through way to get through quickly, which I don't believe is the result of this proposal. I think that's a pre-existing condition. But checking previously, there was no plan to address the sidewalk discontinuities or the safety issues. Is that still true, and could that be changed?
As a part of this application specifically, or generally speaking, for city improvements?
Both.
Okay, so right now there's nothing proposed in the application to improve Langford Avenue. Certainly that's something that could be provided should the applicant so choose. I do know that subsequent to the city council meeting, I believe in early November, where several members of the public spoke about traffic concerns on Langford Avenue, that city staff has been connected with those folks in order to provide some information on our traffic calming program, which has potentials to improve neighborhood streets. And I have not heard any follow-up from that discussion yet at this point.
But it sounds like this is in process.
Yes, potentially. I think the city is potentially looking at improvements on Langford, but at the time, the application itself is not contemplating them.
Exciting. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Bob.
I had a question on the rezoning and the proffer, or just generally the process. So nothing in the rezoning application, if that was approved, locks it, it's kind of like a condition or something like that as part of the rezoning, saving the 2 homes or the layout that we're looking at. Is that correct? That's kind of separate.
Looks like
Correct. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
But, sorry, that would be correct regarding the rezoning. Certainly special use permits can have conditions if found appropriate by the commission and council.
Thank you. That's it. think so. Can you walk me through, are there any setback modifications from the side setbacks?
Yes, there are. Let me make sure I've got the right document in front of me. So there is a request to reduce the 25-foot front yard setback, which is both for the R1S as an aside in the R3 district, to be 10 feet. And then regarding the side setbacks, there's two pieces in play. There's a requirement for any time a development is adjacent to low-density residential districts. So if this parcel was rezoned R3, but the remaining parcels around it would continue to be R1S, that there is a 75-foot buffer required adjacent to those that R3 property. So there's been a request to reduce that to be shown in the exhibit. And then also there is a requirement to have a 20-foot landscape buffer provided between those multifamily R3 developments and a lower density residential, and the applicant has proposed a 6-foot opaque screening fence instead of that 20-foot landscape buffer. And I'm sorry, I believe I didn't note before that they were requesting to reduce the side setbacks from 75 to 10 feet, maintaining the 25-foot rear setback, no change requested there.
Thank you. That's it for me.
No additional comments.
Real quick, unrelated topic. The documents that you needed me to sign for Friendship Court, did you leave them with Ms. Creasy? Oh, never mind, you did, thank you. Cool.
I did.
Okay, where are we? We are not doing public hearings.
Oh, the applicant is here.
Oh, the applicant, yes, that's where we are, applicant.
Good evening, Chair Mitchell, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Kelsey Schlein. I'm a planner with Schimpf Engineering, and I'm here tonight representing Green Retro Salvage Holdings 2 LLC, the property owner and applicant for this application before you tonight. I do want to thank you all for the conversation that was had back at the November 14th Planning Commission public hearing. I think what we have before you tonight is a direct response to concerns that we saw in the staff report that was released before that meeting, and I just really appreciate the conversation that was had that evening that has allowed us to come back before you tonight with what I think is a much better project. Next slide, please. So one item that I wanted to address is the project history and timeline. And I know that you all discussed this briefly at the November 14th meeting, but given the recent adoption of the zoning ordinance rewrite on December 18th and the impending enactment of that on February 19th, we are up against a deadline with this project. This really is the last night for a vote on this, and then it will go forward to City Council prior to their 19th meeting. And what I wanted to demonstrate for you is that we have been working on this application for a very long time, and the timelines just happened to coincide with the recent adoption of the zoning ordinance rewrite. So you'll see in April 2022, we had the pre-application meeting. After the pre-application meeting, we received some comments from staff that there was the potential that the Goings Family Cemetery was located on the property. And so therefore they wanted us to do additional research as to the location of that cemetery. So we did a bunch of courthouse research and tried to find what we could. Some of these plats are very old, and so then we needed to bring on a specialist with ground penetrating radar, which took, that is not a commonly advertised service, and so it took a while to get scheduled. It took a while for the report to be completed, and so there was a large gap between the pre-application meeting and our first submission, working through finding the location of that cemetery, which ultimately was not found to be on the property. It's believed to be on the property to the east So then, just running through the timeline here, in August 2023, that's when we received some initial comments about from Office of Community Solutions and Traffic, and responded to those kind of the best that we could by the November 2023 public hearing. After we had a good discussion back in November, we are here before you tonight. Next slide, please. And I just want to kind of draw attention to the context of this property. So this is nearly a 1-acre site on Langford Avenue. And so we kind of just, put the 20-minute walking shed diameter on there to just kind of call out how connected this would be. This is a bird's eye diameter. I think you can get to quite a few places from this site within 20 minutes. It is also, you'll see the buildings kind of that are the white buildings, you'll see kind of just southeast of the site is the South First Street development. Recently, 64 units were completed there, and they have a planned 175 units for that development. We are directly across the street from the church, and so this, although we are on Langford Avenue, this kind of getting towards this intersection where South First Street, between Langford and South First Street, we really are much kind of in a more mixed housing type, mixed use type of neighborhood on this portion of the street. Next slide, please. Great. And then this is just calling out some additional closer in view of the context of this 1-acre site. Next slide, please. So I wanted to go over the revisions from the last time. And so this is an item that we presented to you at the prior public hearing. It involved the removal of one multifamily structure towards the front of the site and the preservation of 2 of the 3 existing houses along Langford Avenue to preserve the streetscape as best as possible. You'll also note, if you look closely at the grading plan, there is a good grade drop across the property. And to kind of speaking to Mr. Habab's questions just about setback reduction, so there is as Carrie mentioned, an R3 district adjacent to a low family residential district requires a 75-foot separation from the face of the multifamily building to the adjacent low family residential district. So that's clearly difficult to achieve, but if you look at the map here, you'll see that our kind of greater intensity of form, which is still only a building footprint that's about 25,000 square feet, is stepping down the hillside, and it's not directly adjacent to any adjacent single-family dwellings. If you look at the map there, all the buildings are up towards the street, and we're utilizing the entirety of this 1-acre property, stepping down, which also diminishes the view from the streetscape. Next slide, please. And so I know this was something discussed in pre-meeting, so I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the proffer statement. The November proffer committed to 12.5% of units designated as affordable at 60% AMI from year 10 to 99, so an 89-year affordability. And the reason for that is just that it's most difficult to get a project off the ground. That's when the most dollars go into a project. That's when it's most difficult to finance. And so after year 10, you can refinance. It becomes a little more feasible. So that was the thought behind that proffer. After the conversation we had at the meeting, the comments from OCS, which I will note did not change between our 2 proffer statements. They're exactly the same, word for word, despite the fact that the proffer was changed. And so we changed the January proffer to be reflective of the requirements that are now included in the zoning ordinance, which is 10% of units designated at affordable, or designated as affordable at 60% AMI for 99 years. Some of the OCS comments, how I understand them, is just noting that because specific floor plans for each building was not presented as part of the rezoning and special use permit application, they could not confirm the exact square footage for section 3412 calculation. And so what their comments say to me is that if at site plan, we are in excess of 1.0 floor area ratio, we will trigger 3412. I don't believe we will get there. If we do get there, obviously we will comply with 3412. In addition to our proffer statement, we will have to meet both requirements, is kind of my understanding of the comments that they put forth. Next slide, please. And so then, again, just you'll see that the retention of the 2 residential structures and elimination of 1 multifamily structure is the main change to this proposal. We also had a discussion about trees and some green space on the property, and so we, in our resubmittal, proposed an SUP condition, which is now incorporated into your packet, which basically doubles the tree canopy requirement within the parking area. What we're trying to balance here with the amount of parking that we've provided was, first of all, complying with the ordinance as it stands today, but second of all, kind of balancing it with concerns that we heard at the community meeting, just about the availability of on-street parking in that area. And so I think that by increasing the tree canopy while maintaining the required amount of parking, we responded well to those concerns. Next slide, please. And then this is the revised site section, so you can kind of see how the grade steps down and the retention of, so yeah, I mean we're clearly maintaining the existing streetscape there. I think that's much more familiar to residents along that roadway. Next slide. And so this was something that we talked about previously as well, but it's kind of just various development scenarios that might be likely to take place. I know that you all kind of went into this in a little more detail, but the point here is there's an acre lot that's very proximate to to employment centers, amenities in this area, we just really feel that a multifamily development utilizing the grade, maintaining the existing streetscape is just a really creative way to realize some infill development on this property, given its unique location. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to call out a few consistency with the comprehensive plan. It was really Chapter 4, Goal 2, Strategy 2.3. When we saw that and how it was analyzed in the staff report, that really pushed us to revise this application. So prioritizing the preservation of existing structures while encouraging a greater intensity of use, encourage infill development and reuse of or additions to structures rather than demolition of existing buildings. So that really pushed us to the project that we have before you tonight, and I hope that we'll be able to get your support of it, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you all so much.
So, questions, Rory?
I guess one question regarding your proffer,
Sure.
just for clarification. It seems that it triggers the 99 years begins when the first CO is issued. And I don't know if you're planning on phasing this, but if you were to do that, then in the later phases, that 99 years would have already started elapsing before the affordable units are provided. Since that wouldn't, help you until 98 years later, I'm assuming that is just an oversight, but was that intentional or?
No, I mean, well, I think it was intentional to start the trigger for just establishing the trigger for when the affordability will start, and also just I think from a tracking standpoint for staff, rather than having tracking tied to each additional building. I think regarding the phasing question, although it is a 1 acre site, we would probably which is large for this portion of the city, it is a relatively small project. We'd likely develop it all at once. And so I understand your concern, and that remains. I mean, we're more than happy to clarify and address that, but I think it was really, just we have to establish a trigger, and as far as like staff tracking, it's from when that first CO was pulled on the property rather than a specific per building basis. But
Okay. Yeah. And then another question, it seems that your number of units per building has increased since the previous one to compensate for losing the front building. It doesn't seem like the buildings got any bigger though. They're the same height and the footprints look pretty much the same.
Right.
How have you done that?
It would either be for going to a smaller unit. I think previously we had accounted for some 1 bedrooms, and so maybe incorporating entirely studios, relatively small units. Similar to the size of a project that's going up in Belmont right now. But I think alternatively, it gives us the flexibility in the future that if when the tenants move out of the front 2 structures, that they could potentially be converted into a duplex. Right now, one of those structures is being rented out by room. And so maybe there's the potential in the future to create a few units in one of the existing structures so that people actually have cooking facilities in their apartment rather than renting out by room.
Okay. And then I guess the last question, and I don't know if you can answer this, but given the property owner's situation, do you anticipate that the current property owner still anticipates developing the project?
Yeah, the estate asked us to keep pushing on this, so that's why we're here. There was it was an awful tragedy that happened to our client, and the estate wanted us to bring this forward. So yes, I think there's every intention of bringing this to fruition with the current owners of the estate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, clarification, I don't think there's been a change in ownership, and this is not an estate matter in a technical sense, that the current single owner has been the consistent owner throughout.
The owner's, correct, the owner's
Yeah.
wife now has control of the LLC.
Right.
And so we submitted updated ownership documents with her signature on it.
Right, but she has always owned the LLC. At one point, he was a manager of that LLC, so, right, the ownership has not changed.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then, so to follow up on Commissioner Stolzenberg's question, so it sounds to me like you are pushing this closer to, as you said, sort of studio-type apartments, which at sort of, because we are in a strange straddling of the two plans here, that makes me look at the parking lot and say, okay, do we really, okay, we are where we are. So, and then commissioners, staff, somebody correct me, generally speaking, under the new zoning, the setback issues are sort of static anyway, right? I mean, there isn't a 75-foot setback or requirement from general residential to higher density under the new plan.
But this will be RA in the new zoning regardless.
Yeah, well, correct. I'm just trying to talk about the physical landscape that we're in terms of the actual pragmatic setbacks, we're consistent with the modifications you're requesting. You follow me?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, it's my
I think
my
they would
grasp.
be, the 10-foot that we would be requiring, they're asking for would be more than would be required.
That's what I was driving at, that we're not, okay. Yeah, the street, the view from the street, I mean, I think we've got it descending, and you're essentially one story behind the original structures, right? And just as an editorialization, yes, every single comment about this project to City Council was about the Death Race 2000 that the neighbors think that Langford has become. So, but that has nothing to do with this application in terms of pragmatics. Yeah, okay, I don't really have anything beyond that. And except that I don't care if the affordability period, it works out to 99 years or 92 years or whatever. I mean, it is what it is.
Death Race 2000. I don't think it's your fault. I don't think that was your idea. I believe that it's happening. I spent some time, and yeah, the hill is steep. The sidewalks are uneven. And there are kids playing on the street, which is a good thing in a city. That's I think what we want. Can you comment about how this project might influence said death race?
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, I think, with transportation planning and traffic planning, it's always, a compromise, between kind of utility of the road and how many, cars can travel on it, but also, narrower streets tend to indicate to people to slow down. And so I think, Langford is a relatively narrow street. I think it's the grade change that is, maybe encouraging people to drive faster than they should. I think in this case, I think all I can say is typically when people live in the neighborhood, they don't want to speed through their neighborhood. And so as far as these residents living here, I imagine that they will not be, bad actors as far as driving on the road. I imagine they will comply with the laws, just because they will be living there among their neighbors. If they're speeding, their neighbors see that. It's something that's brought up to you when you're walking down the street. So anyway, I think I'm glad to hear that the city is now looking at this and that the residents showed up and expressed their concerns, because that's how, you get the city to focus on these type of issues. If it's not voiced, they don't know. But I would say as far as impacts from this project, yes, there will be more traffic, but hopefully everybody's going to be good actors because they're living in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thanks again for, I appreciate the willingness to modify the plan based on our last conversation and bring this back to us. I had a question on the proffer we had in the pre-meeting. We're just wondering, looking at the, 10% of the units are affordable. When you're rounding, if you're at like 46 units, are you doing 4 units or 5 units? How does that work?
Yeah, I think that is something that has been clarified in the current ordinance. I think previously it was my understanding, I'll ask Roy to weigh in, that it was always interpreted that if you trigger more than the whole number, that you would have to provide the additional unit. That's my understanding of it.
That's my understanding.
Okay, yeah, so now the new ordinance has clarified that, but under what we are proposing and under the R3 as it's currently interpreted, if you hit .1, if you're not providing that additional affordable unit, you haven't met the requirement.
Okay.
So,
yeah, it was just a clarification. So it would be 5 in that case.
yes.
Thanks. And it's not really in the proffer, but I'm assuming the unit size / amenities and distribution around the development would be kind of equal to other units that are in the development?
We have just a quick note about that in B2 that just says the required affordable dwelling units shall be comprised proportional to the unit types constructed.
Perfect. And do you know, this is just out of curiosity, the residents in the houses right now that are staying, are those residents staying throughout, or what's happening with them?
Yeah, I think that would be, that's the intent. I think there was a good conversation about displacement. And so by, preserving 2 of the 3 existing houses, the lease is already in place. You already have tenants, vetted and approved to live in your unit. So yeah, I can't imagine the owner has any intention of moving them out. I think it would really just be more so of a nuisance issue, and just how to navigate that. But I think one of the main goals of revising this, and it was the conversation back at the 14th, was promoting anti-displacement.
That's good to hear. I had a question on building height. It looks like you're at 3.5 stories-ish, which to me feels compatible with the neighborhood. And let's see. There was nothing in the conditions that you suggested in the SUP to retain the 2 homes. May I ask, why is that? Or is there maybe you don't want to lock it in for forever? Or what was the logic behind that?
Sure, and I'll ask Carrie to weigh in on this if I'm off on this. But my understanding of special use permits is that it's a very specific request that we're putting forward with a special use permit. We have submitted a very specific plan for a specific number of units with a concept plan that guides development on the property. And so, if the existing front units were not to be retained, we would not be consistent with the approval of the special use permit.
And I do agree with that statement. I will note you can, as the commission, also recommend adding in any conditions that are shown in the plan that you feel are particularly important and that you want to call out specifically in a recommended condition to council. But we do generally, the plan covers it, but as you'll note, the landscaping component was called out, so certainly in the written conditions proposed by staff, so certainly that could be added as well on the commission's recommendation.
But just to be clear on that, that would only apply for the special use permit for density and setbacks. But if they were to pursue a by right R3 development, I don't know if that's possible, 75-foot setbacks, but they could potentially do that without any conditions since it isn't proffered. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. If it is in the conditions or proffered, whatever the case may be, this is more of a question of procedure. Could these homes ever be demolished? What would be the process to go through that, like 50 years down the line when they're, probably
I mean,
needing
even in development, couldn't we argue? I mean, didn't we have on Stribling a consolidation of one building to another? Was it substantially consistent with what the original site plan and the new site plan was? Didn't we have that conversation?
The general, the general, sorry, what's the term we normally use?
General accord.
Sorry?
I just said, general accord with the application as presented.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it sounds to me, I don't know where that line is. I think that's partly the planning commission makes that decision whether you're out of line on the SUP or not at that point.
So it's not a condition of you can never do this, it's that your
You would have to come
development
back and
has to
ask.
comply with this.
Yeah. I don't want to make it harder. I mean, I'm assuming they're acting on good faith to save them. Just didn't want to make them save them for a million years, That was where I was going with it.
Yeah.
Both of those properties have been somewhat internally renovated. They've spent some time and money on that over the years, I believe, for their rent by the room scheme that Green Retro Salvage 2 does a lot of.
No, other than that, it's great. I mean, traffic, there's nothing you could do about that. And I was looking at at first I had a concern about the parking lot and how it fits, but across the street, there's the church parking lot and one property over. It's a similar layout, and it's also, I think, a 9-unit building.
Right
Just
next
counted
door.
mailboxes, yeah. So, looks good to me.
All right, Michael, any questions? Oh, you got
Just one follow-up thing. My general impression is that this area has been denser throughout the measured time of zoning in this city, except for the 1991 swap to R1S. Is that?
2003.
2003
Yeah,
R1S.
2003. Yeah, it was R3, yeah.
So I don't think the sort of particular zoning district here, particularly with 2 over to the church and 1 over to the apartment complex, I think we're consistent with the neighborhood and the history of the neighborhood, I think. All right, never mind, I'll shut up now.
I just wanted to add appreciation for the revised design. I was not a part of the commission when the first design came through, but I appreciate the sentiment and the acknowledgement of the comprehensive plan and some of the goals of maintaining the 2 existing structures. I think it's an improved plan, and I just wanted to add that. So thank you.
So, Rory, what do we think?
If I may have a question.
Oh, please.
Ms. Creasy, when you were saying that they would have to come back, they would have to come back if we included a condition that what be put on the property be in general accord with the proposal, or they'd have to come
Well,
back
they would
either
have
way?
to do it either way because the rezoning proffers, the SUP has conditions. That's a pretty significant condition. That's not an administrative kind of situation. So they would have to come back and ask. But again, if it's, there are circumstances where that is something that would make sense to do, potentially. Down the road, way down the road.
I move to recommend approval of this application to rezone the subject property from R1S to R3 on the basis that the proposal would serve the interests of the general public and good zoning practice.
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion? Wow, you guys are easy tonight. Ms. Creasy, would you pull the board?
Sure. I'm just clarifying, this is the first of 2 actions.
We're talking
for
about
the
the
site.
rezoning.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Mr. Solly Yates,
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio,
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg,
Aye.
Mr. Habab,
Aye.
and Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, what do you think about the special use permit?
All right. I move to recommend approval of this application for a special use permit in the R3 zone at TMP 26001200 and an address of 108 Langford Avenue to permit additional density with the following conditions. The conditions recommended by staff, plus a condition that the development take the general form as submitted in the application, plus a condition, the landowner shall provide a minimum of 1 tree per 4 parking spaces to increase the required tree count in the parking lot, by 100% beyond the requirements provided for in Section 34-873D2 of the Charlottesville zoning ordinance as of December 4th, 2023.
So before you second it, somebody seconds it. So your thoughts about, as the application is presented, is what your intent to protect the two houses? Because Mr. Bob wanted those. Is that what your intent is?
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
What do you mean by general form? Can you clarify?
The general layout, maybe would be a better word.
Let's specify a drawing and a date. That's usually very helpful.
Yes.
And could I
Had one of those.
request for council's consideration, just, and I'm sorry that there's a motion on the table and I'm speaking, but if the general form provided that, and I don't know whether it's, prudent to put in there, if there's some type of, natural disaster act of God, we can take the structure out without coming before you all, or whether general form covers that, like, I guess the question is, like, just general form, which includes preservation of existing structures as shown as the concept plan dated, so-and-so date, provided that, and impacts to the buildings from natural disaster shall not be considered inconsistent with the condition as proposed, or
This
something
may
like
be a
that.
question for council, but I think that's baked into the cake anyway, right? Force majeure is force majeure.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
If there was a natural disaster that happened to destroy those homes, you would just be able to continue as it was.
Okay, great.
So let me revise that. Provided that the development be consistent with the general layout as shown in the concept plan on page 140 of the packet submitted December 4th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
You did. Mr. Bob seconds. Ms., any more chatting about this? All right, Ms. Creasy.
All right, Mr. Sully Yates.
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio.
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg.
Aye.
Mr. Habab.
Aye.
And Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. All right, that wraps up our regular business for the evening. Is there anything else you guys would like to discuss? You mentioned that we've got a meeting last Tuesday in the month.
Fourth
Work session.
Tuesday, so it's the 23rd, I believe.
23rd, okay. All right.
Pretty certain.
Mr. DeRonzio, would you like to take us up?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will note that January 9th is National Play God Day, which, some of us may or may not observe that on other days of the year or more consistently. But today is that day, and I regret not mentioning this before the meeting got underway because we went through an entire meeting without making any capricious, arbitrary, and fiat decisions that upended a bunch of people's lives. But there's always next month, so I would move that we adjourn with that in mind.
Is there a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you guys very much. Phil,